Hi, my name is Åke Järvklo, and I do web solutions for a living at a company called WebSteps. So I usually work out among clients, and I stumble across unexpected barriers on the web sometimes because I wear assistive technology. I need to zoom and stuff. My name is an accessibility problem because sometimes I can't get into registration because of those strange Swedish letters there. Sorry, you can't have other things than alphabets here. Sort of an accessibility problem anyway, and that's what we're going to get to. Because what is accessibility? The quality that makes an experience open to all, that's accessibility. And it's also a professional discipline aimed to achieving number one. So, I'm going to talk about this, and I'm going to say ALI a lot. And you've probably seen this acronym somewhere because, phrase it, hard to write. Accessibility, A, 11 letters, and Y, ALI. In Swedish, tillgänglighet, T, 12 strange letters, and a T, T12T. So we start a project, and we get the specs, and they look like this. We're going to do a landing page. It's going to be all bells and whistles, lots of experience, and okay, we've got accessibility. Do we need to build it like this in order to get across? This is what it can feel like, right? So you attack this. No, it's too complicated. We wait with that. That's too early to start. And 6 months later, it's too hard. We've come too far. It's going to be too expensive. Been there, done that. I'm usually the go-to guy. You know a little bit about this. You fix it. Why can't you fix this in 10 hours? Like, no, sorry. But why does it have to be this way? Why is it hard? Why do we experience this as hard? Well, there are lots of laws and regulations, of course, in the EU. You can get sued over this if you're in the wrong business. 4 years from now or so, this is going to include all e-commerce too, because the EU is working on that type of legislation. Among others, well, of course, there's some requirements on the level of company and so on and so forth, but we're getting there. The carrot hasn't worked, so the stick is getting harder, so to speak. We need to do this, right? So we attack this problem. We start reading the guidelines, and they're massive. There's a lot of text in there, lots of documents. And we're developers, some of us. But I know things before I do things, right? So I try to read this up from the specs, and too much, right? Requirement, you must fulfill standards. Tick. Okay, how do we do that programmatically? Understandable language, anyone? That's one of the requirements. Not everything is doable from a technical standpoint. You can't automate this. You need to have another way of attacking the problem to be able to fulfill this. And one of them is to actually go through the requirements and don't just say, okay, we're going to do this. Some of us might, because we might lose the contract otherwise. But make sure that the requirements are proper, that they are actually doable before you embark on a project. Right, procurement, project lead, everyone. Can they perhaps help us? And then there's the cost thing. We all know this is expensive, right? And by the way, we don't have any disabled visitors, right? We have a handicap spot, but we don't have them here, right? Those people, right? It's like being in a pub, half a flight of stairs up from ground level. They do a survey. Do we have any wheelchair users here? No, we don't need a ramp. I mean, face it, we do that on the web all the time, right? Some of us do it unknowingly, some of us because we have to, some of us against better judgment, but it's done. It's a lot of that stuff out there. So how can we attack this? This is one of my selling points. We stop being afraid of what might go wrong, start being excited about what we can do, what can go right instead, right? Don't panic. We'll walk you through this together and see if we can find something that we can build on here. Because what's a disability? Well, you have different classes, of course. Visual, Google is blind, we used to say. Not so much anymore, but anyway. Motor, you have a problem moving things, which means that you have a problem getting to controls. Auditory, yeah, you get it. Cognitive, you might be stressed out or something so that your memory is fading. Maybe you're hungover or something, or you have an ability deficit, or limited ability of keeping a memory. Speech? Hang on, speech, a disability? Yeah, how many of you are using Siri or Google Home or something like that? How many of you have an accent that they haven't quite learned yet? Disability problem, right? Can we tackle this? The point is, it's not just an ailment, it's not just something that's physically wrong with you. You can be out in the sun, wearing sunglasses, trying to do something with greasy fingers on a touch phone, and trying to hit that small thing that closes the cookie banner that stops you from using the site. Right. Permanent, you lose an arm. Sure, problem, you can't use your right arm. You might have a cast on it, so for a while you have that disability. Or you might be carrying your baby and you want to use an app to order a taxi or something. So it's not permanent. It's not about those handicapped. It's not about some special needs. It's about ordinary needs, what we need to do with the site, what your visitors need to do with your site. It's about all of us. I have a midlife crisis. I have to go bifocal and trying to adapt to that, which means that these are my good glasses, so I can actually use them. So sometimes there's a technical reasons for disabilities as well, because I am partly disabled, but I feel normal, right? Because a person with disabilities is not a person with special needs. It's just a person with ordinary needs that has to be met by special efforts. Tools, assistance, maybe someone can help out. But the need is the same. The need, we all share those needs to some extent. So what's normal? Keep that in mind. How dare you insult me? You're all individuals, right? No, I'm not. Because that's accessibility about, we are building digital services and we do our best, hopefully, to build them as good as we can for as many people as we can. And we have a lot of people coming in with various abilities. Some need help, some have chosen their help, some have got help. Assistive technology or whatever, glasses, something. So the user has chosen some tools, maybe some assistance, and we can lower this threshold that keeps them from coming into our services by applying accessibility good practices, which is about, that's what the legislation is about. It's not out there to get you, it's there to help you, and it's a standard. So once we get through this, we remove as many thresholds as we can, we hopefully get more people into our sites and apps and whatnot, and we start getting more conversion ideally. So this is about money. Look up the stats. How many of us are having glasses? How many are having certain ailments that would consider us to be classified as disabled? All of us, right? At some point in life and some point in time. Because can we really know who do we lose in our conversion just because we don't know that we have to do something? You can't. One of the bad things with this, you can't really measure who's using a screen reader. Who's using Siri, maybe. I don't know. But you need to let go of control and just go with the flow and realize that you can do whatever you can use the best practices to an extent and get very far with this. The potential is great. And all accessibility issues that has been reported to you are actually to be treated as bugs, because that's what they are. We can spend so much time trying to adapt to IE8 or something, or whatever is the bad thing of the day. But why not just doing this the right way when it comes to accessibility? Because that's the same thing as IE8, right? Something that prevents you from using the good stuff of your service, maybe like a certain pizza service in the US who got sued over this. You don't get part of your customers in there because they can't access it, because they have a certain type of accessibility technology attached. Because if it happens to me, I use an iPhone. Safari might widescreen sometimes on certain sites, and I can pull up Google Chrome and try that instead, and usually it works, because that's reality right now. But if you have a disability and you're dependent on assistive technology, maybe you don't have that choice. So treat it as a bug. Because you don't know. You might be on a journey trying to read things, get into the close this button. You might be out there in a strange country where you have to use Google Translate to picture translate something that, well, in my case, maybe I don't understand Chinese. That's my disability when it comes to languages, right? You never know what your users are using. Technical malfunctions, yeah, white screen of death, anyone? Yeah, cool. You may have a bad day, so you're not capable of reading it because you're so mad at something you don't see what the instructions are and you click wrong. You're stressed out. You fill in something, the phone rings, and when you get back, oh, what was I doing? Happens to all of us. Oh, well, I'm normal, right? Anyway, it may be cold outside, you may have mittens, your phone may stop working because it's -10 outside. You're a bartender and you have to use something and it gives you an audio feedback and, oh, hang on. Accessibility problems. The good thing about this is that everybody's doing about, well, most sites that we look at do the same kind of mistakes, and probably we all do in this room as well. So if you're lucky and you start out from the scratch of this, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit you can actually quickly get over. Low contrast text, 85% in this survey of accessibility that was made like 6 months ago, something like that. A lot of sites. Stats are there. Missing image texts, interesting point there. Empty links and buttons. You can't pick them up because you don't hear them, perhaps. You might not even get them if you try to keyboard navigate your site. So you may end up with, I mean, if you only look at alternative texts, not alt tags, by the way, alt text. So imagine you have Siri reading the site for you, and they say, okay, here's a playlist. No photo description available, photo image may contain one person, and the all-time classic photo image may contain one person standing outdoor and water. Something's missing here. Bad language in the alternative text. But more and more people out there are using voice now, right? Siri, read me this. Tesla, give me this. Whatever. You don't know what they're using. You know nothing, right? So you need to care for that. Cognitive. If you have a problem, if you're like me, I'm a bit absent-minded sometimes. You start filling in a form, you enter the number 20, and the phone rings. 5 minutes later, you're back. Oh, what's this? 20, okay. Because this is cool looking and very nice, right? But you can easily remedy it because you can add, that is specified in the web standards, that's the rule for that, have a label element and make sure that it's visible as well. That way you catch both the cited and the non-cited, for instance. So you get back to this after 20 minutes, oh, team size, right, I'm going on, no problem. So follow the rules and you get a lot of built-in accessibility. You can right-click on a link and open that up in a new tab, for instance, or run your tools that you have plugged in to your browser. Now, if you have a button styling it as a link for some reason, well, then you have to build that to give the same experience. So use the proper thing for the proper purpose. That's not too hard, right? Unless you have a specification that makes it impossible. Oh, some more things here. Text sizes. Well, I zoom a lot, but you can guarantee that a 75-year-old man with a sight deficit will actually choose to have a larger font on his computer. So why should you force him to look at something small? By choosing the wrong measurement on a font size, for instance. Media captions. Anyone looking at YouTube while traveling? Forgot your phones? I tend to read the subtitles even though I have my earphones in because noisy environment, right? Click and interact around as weird keyboard navigation, strange document outlines, etc., etc. And there's more. So, where do we start? Well, I think I can demo this, but my machine might not allow me. Let's see. Yeah, I do. Cool. This is actually the new Edge browser, and I've installed a few plugins to do some accessibility testing. Microsoft, I'm using their web page because I'm demoing their product, which is called, no, not that one. Sorry, that was the next step. Microsoft Accessibility Insights for Web. This is a Chrome plugin. So it's been available in Chrome for ages, and now that they have released the new Edge, it's available there as well. Just by doing this, let's see where the tab stops are. Let's see how this handles when you try to navigate it by keyboard. So, okay. Skip to main content, on focus is shown. And you can follow where the tabs go, right? Now this is cool. This is logical. And they have a good feedback visually when you click between the links. This is a good example, right? Randomly, and not to shame anyone, I just found a good example on a Swedish site. No, I'm using them, and I'm not in any way. They do a massively good job compared to some of their competitors when it comes to accessibility. Let's see what this site does if you try to tab it. Okay, 1, 2, 3. There's a go to skip link, and okay. Yeah, looks good. Looks really, hang on. Now this is probably just one of those small oversights that you would have caught if you'd run this tool at the end of a sprint and check things. Because what's going on here, it took me a while to figure it out, but actually they have a nice drop-down menu and another drop-down menu. And unfortunately, nobody checked that they actually can get keyboard focus. And when they get keyboard focus, they don't extend the menu, right? So there's two things that could be easily fixed. You can use this tool to your advantage. By the way, you can have your boss run this. The product owner, whoever ordered the system from you. And if they find something like this that you've missed, well, you get feedback, you can fix that. Having this from day one, cool. Now, there's another tool. It's called the Wave Accessibility Tool. I'm not sure where it comes from. From WebAIM, it seems. This is good. This is a company who deals a lot with accessibility. This gives you a report, errors, contrast errors, and so on and so forth. But what you should know about this is that it also shows it has the possibility to show you the structure of the site, because that's important. Siri, give me the next heading of this level. Siri, give me the next article. Yeah, okay, they marked things up as navigation, but then down to level 3 here. I mean, imagine this being a book, and it starts with a 1.1.1 and subheadings. You'd be confused, right? Even more so when you get this read to you. Now, let's look at Microsoft. Microsoft, by the way, are excellent at accessibility. They are, really. Go check them out. Let's see, we're on the same tool for them. And look at the structure. And this is better, right? Because they group things logically in their tree, the way HTML was designed. So you can go from Surface deals, products from home, directed to Xbox, directed to for work. You have no idea what technology is there. It might be a plugin to the browser. It might be a screen reader. It might be Google, for all I care. You never know what your visitor is using. But you can help them by maintaining this. And you can test it to see that it's not accidentally not working the way you're supposed to. Okay. So let's see where we are. Yeah. And the no panic things comes here again, because really don't panic. There are good tools out there. And if you look at audits, which by the way are built into all Chromium browsers by default, there's an accessibility function in your web developer tools section that does audits for you. And there's also one to investigate on an even deeper technical level. And if you run this on a few sites, these are 4 of our major mobile operators, by the way. Telia is this one. SEO, always in the green. Performance, getting there because Google penalizes bad performance nowadays, right? Best practices, security, nothing, maybe. But accessibility almost always trails. So there's a lot of effort that is not being done right now. So there should be a lot of simple solutions if you look for them, if you know how to do it. Because it's a standard, it's a foundation of the web. Accessibility is built into the web. The fundamentals, because web standards are threefold, basically. or rather, you have all the specs. HTML, CSS, JavaScript, whatever. But on top of that, we have some accessibility guidelines. For the browser producers, you must implement this because we want whatever we throw at you to be accessible. And there are some assistive technology connections here, hooks, callbacks, APIs, etc., that the operating system can use to get to the browser, so you can use VoiceOver in Chrome, for instance. Because VoiceOver is in the operating system and Chrome is an application. So there's a connection. And we've got authoring tools, accessibility guidelines. If we build a tool, we're supposed to do this right. We're supposed to actually create accessible material. And there are evaluation tools that can check that we're doing this correctly. This might be Notepad, by the way, but the tools, as long as we don't break any rules, we are supposed to be able to use the content accessibility guidelines, the WCAG, this strange acronym 2.1 AA that we're all striving for, or should be. Because if this is in place and this is in place, then this is what we need to look at when we build our applications. There are 2.0 and 2.1. Fortunately, when it comes to legislation, most of legislation now, American Disabilities Act, EU, Sweden, we're all referring to WCAG 2.1 on a conformance level of AA. So if you know a little bit about this, it'll get you far in avoiding a lawsuit, for instance, besides doing the right thing, right? So the 2.1 is not that old, but it's a superset, it's an extension of 2.0. There's no breaking changes here. Conformance level A, well, you've done something that's not breaking. AA, you've done a reasonable amount. You're not really knowingly in the way of any sort of accessibility. And AAA starts to aim at specific disabilities, which makes them very hard to tick off all of them. So AAA could be for, I don't have a good example there, but if you do a few of the AAA conformance levels requirements, good, but stick to the AA, which means that out of the total 78 success criteria in the WCAG, you don't need to bother about everyone. You don't need to do them all. And you need to realize that the WCAG, massive as it is based on 4 principles. What you do should be perceivable. Language, time-based media, well, carousel gives you enough time to read, etc., etc. Keyboard accessible, it's maybe operable. If we can't operate it, we can't interact with it, right? Seizures and physical reactions, yeah, well, we could accidentally trigger an epilepsy attack if we have something blinking at a certain frequency. Check, rule for that, not a problem, right? But if you don't know about it, you might accidentally cause some harm even. Navigable input modality, if you're in a form, you gotta go to the next field, go to the next field. That's accessibility. Understandable, yeah, correct language. Input assistance, predictable. If you have 3 inputs for the same type of number on the same page, use the same method of input on them all, right? Robust, this is a part of some discussion because breaking JavaScript is in there somewhere. Can we do this? Can we do something that only renders via JavaScript in the client? Is that accessible enough? Debate, look it up. But make it compatible, make it work everywhere. There's a quick ref there, and I'm a little bit short of time, so I'm not going to demo it, but if you go to this link, you'll find a checklist of all of these requirements. All 78 of them. That's not too many, right? And what you'll find is, if you go to a specific, like, mark up the correct language so that you get a Swedish voice in Sweden and an American voice in America, there's also links to the actual referendum text, the reference text for the requirement, and reference to the best practices. If you want to fulfill this, do this, with a lot of examples. We can use this. If we can find that we're breaking a rule via the tool will direct you to how to fix it, if you know where to look. So don't panic. Find the errors, use some validator somewhere, and it'll help you. So when you build this, you need to understand that web standards are actually a stack of standards. At the bottom, we've got HTML. We have something called ARIA, which I'll get back to. CSS to add like grids, like that stuff. That's not in HTML. So structure, visual, and interactive behavior. What you get out of an HTML page is actually a tree that has an API. And on top of that, there's a lot of media. So what you structure is what you get. HTML is not text. It's a structure. And if you treat that structure right, everything's well. If you do something wrong, there's a lot of error handling in there. So a lot of strange things are going on if you break these rules, like having the wrong heading level or something like that. It's designed never to break. So you can do strange things without realizing it and never even knowing that you do strange things. But it's internal tree structure, it's a source of all visuals, it's an API for interaction. But there's one more tree that drives accessibility, that makes it possible for the operating system to get into the browser and see what's going on. It's called the ARIA tree, the accessibility tree. And the connection between those two is ARIA. Accessibility for rich internet applications, bland name. But when you load a page, all of your semantic documents, a header, a button, a form, and so on and so forth, have all the default settings to render a good accessibility tree. A link has certain properties. We can right-click on it. A button has certain properties. We can focus it. We can operate it with an entity character, etc., etc., etc. So use the proper markup, and you get this sort of right, up to a point. And when that's not good enough, like pop-ups, no pop-ups in HTML yet, you can add some ARIA code using standard HTML attributes to make the connections for the accessibility tree. I had a discussion about assembly programming on lunch. This is basically some sort of assembly programming-ish thing. If you take control, you take control. You take on a lot of responsibility. Some people think that, okay, ARIA, there's ARIA. We know this, we know how to do this. So ARIA everything. No. Don't go there. Because the first rule of ARIA is don't use it. This is actually in the spec. Don't use ARIA if there's a semantic element in HTML that does the job. Don't make a link into a button, because then you're going to have to kill the right-click mechanism and do a lot of strange things that the link was never designed for. A table contains data. The main content element contains the main content. The navigation element has certain properties that helps you use whatever assistive technology you need to get to the content in a structured way. So don't do this. You can do it because there's a role attribute and there are a whole lot of rules. Some you can override a div, which has no meaning at all. It's just a placeholder. And adding this ARIA attribute role button means that I guarantee that this is a button, which means I take on the responsibility to add clickable, enter, space, styling, focus, all that stuff. And if I forget something, I break accessibility. So why not use a button? Oh, and by the way, if you use any of these CSS frameworks, the class information is not in the accessibility tree. So you lose all that. It's just fluff. It's just something that's filtered out. So with great power comes great responsibility. Be careful. You can really mess things up if you start dabbling in ARIA, or if you use a plugin somewhere that does ARIA for you and you have no control of what it does. Unless you check it with tools, of course. There are some giants writing about this, and it's like a 12-page article about how to do a pop-up, describing it from all angles. I'm not going to go into that code now because I have like 15 minutes left or something. Yeah, anyway. Not enough time. Sometimes you need to. Sometimes you can actually benefit from this. I just want to show you a beautiful piece of accessibility. This is available on GitHub. If everything breaks down and you only have JavaScript, this is a date picker. It falls back to the internal date picker of Chromium. We all know this brother here. You can't see it. Thank you. Let's see. Accessibility problem. I had no idea, and I have no tools to check it. There we are. So I've turned off JavaScript in my browser because that's the worst case. Something might not be loaded, it might be blocked by someone or whatever. So this is where we start up. But what they want, what they strive to do, so I'll turn JavaScript back on, is to have a new way of entering dates that is also accessible, totally accessible, readable from a screen reader, etc. So why not make people enter the dates here? Yeah, okay. So what happened here? It's hopefully anyway, they are actually adding onto this JavaScript languages that do language processing. So in this case, everyone using this date picker might go next week. And it handles all focus, and this is what it should read. This is experimental. Imagine someone actually pulling the effort into this. It should be in the browser, right? But you need to think about, do we really need to do that? Or can we go with the standards that gives us so much free accessibility? So I've hinted at it. The way to go about this is not learning everything, but it's actually making the right person in the team know about what requirements are on your role to be a part of this. It's a team challenge. It's way too important to, okay, you touched it, you're responsible, we're the one we're going to hang when this blows up in our face. No, don't do that. Stakeholders, architects, DevOps, developers, testers, everyone has a role to play. And if we cooperate, it's not going to be that hard. Because if the designer if the designers do their bit, you don't have any problems with colors, right? Etc., etc., etc. So start by doing an inventory. I've shown you some tools already, and work from there. You probably have a time budget for your project. You might have a performance budget. So consider having an accessibility budget. Which panels, which checks should go green in this sprint? And go for them. Slowly improving things. Keep learning. Because there are no tools that will save us. There's no plugin that will fix this for us. There's no NPM package or NuGet package that will fix this. You need to take control to learn exactly how small the effort really needs to be. And then stick to it. Maybe you can say, well, this criteria is not met, so I'm not allowed to check in my code. Tools are there, we can plug them into Visual Studio. There was a session yesterday about editor config. You can plug accessibility in there, IntelliSense. But you still have to check things, right? Language, well, AIs might, but if we try to generate alternative text, we don't know if we want to present this as a cat, a happy cat, or the super cat Bruce that can climb a tree in 2 seconds. Because it depends a bit on context as well. What's the best alternative text? Team challenge. And there are false positives, of course. So if you have a chance, I will provide the links from the presentation somehow, by the way. This is a team of people who actually set to do, well, we're going to do something that compliant, 100% WCAG AA, but it's totally unusable. How far can we get this? And they got long down that road. And there are code pens. So you can learn from this. And beware of those false positives, because you need to be humble. It's like Game of Thrones. Winter's coming, something's beyond the wall. We build our swords, we learn a lot, and we go there and someone tells you, well, you can't save us, you know nothing. You need to learn a lot more. And that's where we are. Be humble. You need to learn enough and keep learning. Make sure that everyone that actually has a problem has a way to contact you, telling you about it, because you never know until someone tells you, because you're not in their shoes. You're not using their assistive technology thingy-mageek, whatever it is. They're not having my glasses, for instance. So that's one way. As you get the reports, try to learn about them and see how we can fix them. Make sure that you can fix them. This is not a we are accessible badge to slam on your site. There's no such thing. This is an ongoing process. All the time. A few notes about tools. Anyone looked in the audit section of Word lately? does a lot of these checkings already. Now, don't save Word documents just because they passed the Microsoft audit, right? They're not web documents, but there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of questions now. How do I do an accessible PDF? Well, the tools are in there. You just need to know about them. Maybe, just maybe, if you're like me, I've been working with an Episerver and CMSs, and those content users, they can enter any HTML. Who's responsible? Well, maybe, just maybe, you can prohibit them from saving their HTML until it's actually valid on an accessibility level as well. We already do that. We blacklist a few tags. We do spell checking. So add that module, and that will help. Their role will also take part in the accessibility process, which is a good thing. And there's overlays. I bet some of you have seen them. There's a button somewhere on screen in the rendered area that has a symbol that gives you a menu where you can change text size and do all sorts of adaptations. Don't use them. Think about it. Would you prefer to have to put that screen size, the text size, on every site you visit every time you get there the first time? Or do you want them to actually listen to what you set in your browser? I want bigger text. Why should I do it for you? I already do my tools. I already use my tools. I already know my tools. So, be humble. Listen to the user. Costs, of course. Accessibility is very, very expensive, right? Well, depends. What are the risks? When does the cost occur? You want to be an ostrich or you want to be proactive? Both methods work, both strategies work. We're not going to be found out. This is not going to cost us anything. Oh, here comes the cost down the way. Or be proactive and do a little bit every sprint and take the cost gradually. And maybe if you're found out with something that you didn't anticipate doesn't work, maybe it's not that expensive because you have a better level to start with. That depends on what you're building. That depends on your audience. You never know. Tools alone will never save us. There is no package, there is no plugin, there is nothing that can take care of this for you. But they're a huge help if you start using them right. So, invest in accessibility. This was a discussion. Can you be an expert in X in 2 weeks? No. Can I give you expertise in 50 minutes? I've tried. But I hope that your takeaway from this is some awareness of things you didn't know before. I hope that you found that there can be some practical techniques you can use to improve your practices, your current practices. Start talking about it. Start educating your teams. Start looking at this from a different perspective even. And you know that there might be some seeds for attacking this strategically that you can get to in a later point in time. But it won't, this is what I can't give you. I can't give you time to practice on real projects because that's how you learn. Find some error. If you think it's low enough fruit to pick to handle, do it. Learn in the process. Spread that knowledge. Next time, you do it automatically. That's how you learn. You train. I have no time to make you reflect. That will require a couple of days and that's more of a training session. That's a long thing to do. Maybe you should have someone in your project who drives this. But I hope that maybe you give yourself some time to figure out how you can approach it differently next time. And above all, don't panic. There's a lot of information out there. Just don't overdo the start. Learn gradually, and you'll see. We can do this. This is what I've got for you. Couple of links. Be humble and curious. It's a team effort. Build with us, not for us, and from the user perspective. Tools can help you get a good grasp, and don't panic. So this is my takeaway from this. Thank you for listening.